For this problem, we want to know what the markings are for A and B on the horizontal axis. So let me mark A and B on the horizontal axis here. So one thing that you want to notice about trig functions is they're very symmetric when the y values are the same. What I mean by that is up here I'll call this point 1 and up here I'll call this point 2. Notice that point 1 and point 2, they both have the same y value. They have the same output value. And so what this tells us is it tells us that the distance on the x-axis for point 1 and point 2, it's going to be the same distance away from, I'll call this third point, I'll call this P3, right? Which is the maximum point on this curve. And so hopefully you can kind of see that P1 is equal distance from P3 and P2 is equal distance from P3 on the x-axis. But I also want you to notice that what else is true is the distance between the marking B to pi, so what I'm marking in green here, is the same distance as the marking for A, right, to 0. Okay, so that marking is at x equals 0. And so your job is to figure out what is the distance of A and then what is the distance of P. So the distance of A, we know that it's a little bit bigger than 0. And the distance for B, we can estimate that to be less than pi. So in this problem for part A, I believe, it's asking you, it says, suppose that A is, what does it give you? Pi over 6. So if A is pi over 6, so if this distance here is pi over 6, then what is the distance of B? Well, notice that the marking of that green line, so this green line here, this distance is pi over 6. Therefore, this distance, the second marking, between B and pi, that total distance must also be a distance of pi over 6. So since we know that this marking here is pi, then to find B has to be pi minus pi over 6. Does that make sense? Okay, and so when you get to question B, now question B is asking us the same thing, but it says, let's suppose that the marking for A, instead of being pi over 6 units, what if that distance is 0.9 units? Then from there, you should be able to figure out the distance of point B. I hope this helps.